Welcome back to the Criticizer of Conlangs with your host, James Pigeon. And this episode is on Universalglot, or is it Universalglot, according to its own orthography. Universalglot was created by French linguist Jean Pirro in 1868 as an international auxiliary language. The language was praised by Novio creator Otto Jespersen and Interlingue's official magazine, saying, "Monuments have been erected to the glory of Zamenhof, and the name Schleier has been engraved in marble. Their precursor and master, Pirro, has been honored with oblivion." First off, phonology. For consonants, Uniglot has ma, pa, ba, fa, va, na, ta, da, sa, z, la, sh, ya, g, k, wa, r, and maybe ha. So, about the glottal fricative, Pirro said that H should, quote, always be aspirated, as in the French word echo, but H is silent in echo, so, well, anyway, that sure is a consonant inventory. Pretty straightforward, but, maybe a bit large for an international language. And the uvular fricative is a really weird choice for the rhotic. I don't know why these early conlangs keep doing this. And then for vowels, there's I, U, E, A, O, U. So the main questionable choice for the vowels was the front closed rounded vowel, U. Why was that necessary to include? But overall, this inventory is decent. There are definitely a lot of phonemes, which hurts its universality. In terms of orthography, the alphabet used A for A, B for ba, C for ts, D for da, E for e, F for fa, G for ga, H for either ha or being silent, it's unclear, I for e, J for ya, K for ka, L for la, M for ma, N for na, O for o. And Ethel is claimed to represent just silence in the reference grammar, but I couldn't find a single word that uses it. So, yeah, P is pa, QU is qua, R is ra, S is sa, sigma is sha, T is ta, U is u, U with diareses is u, V is va, and Z is za. So, this is kind of unnecessary. Y and W remained absent, but Pirro found it necessary to include sigma, Ethel, the QU digraph, and U with diareses. Using sigma for the postalveolar fricative is an interesting choice, and I actually really liked it aesthetically, if not practically. Also, why does U with diareses have to represent U? Y was literally right there. So, the highlight of Universalglot, the grammar. This is a good grammar. This is better than Esperanto, which is not saying much from a modern perspective, but this predates Esperanto, so that's a bit embarrassing. There are two definite articles, the singular L and the plural li, which is an interesting way to do it, instead of having a plural suffix necessarily, just using a plural article. And there's one indefinite article, un. So this is from the 1800s. Nouns are assumed to be masculine, and you can add the "in" suffix to make it feminine. Jan Measley would probably throw a fit about this, but I don't really care. Adjectives are like in English, being singular and invariable, which is good, simple. And there are also the suffixes li, which can make any word an adjective, and eve to make it an action. And if there's no article in front of the noun, it is just assumed to be plural, so li is implied. So the conjugations are pretty simple, but there are a lot of tenses. Infinitive, past, present, future, conditional, imperative, past and present participles. These are all pretty good, except the infinitive, conditional, and imperative are a bit unnecessary. English doesn't have infinitives, and we've done fine without them. And the conditional can just be formed with an auxiliary verb, like I would. And the imperative could just be the third person singular like in Spanish, pero sin la distinción entre de las órdenes positivas y negativas. Also, the brave decision to resist the temptation of making a perfect tense, known by so many Indo-European speaking conlangers, is admirable. Alright, vocabulary. First, adverbs. There are 5 categories laid out. Adverbs of place, like there, here, far. Adverbs of manner, like otherwise, quickly, together. Adverbs of mode, like certainly, yes, no. Adverbs of time, like then, formerly, still. And adverbs of quantity, like at least, well, badly. And in terms of conjunctions, and is because is car, or is o, etc. Pronouns are pretty simple, with subjective, objective, and possessive forms, just like in English. Was this really necessary, though? Why not use one form with a possessive suffix, not to mention the second person plural possessive? One could easily see the Romance and Germanic roots in many of these, and for Europeans, the vocabulary is pretty recognizable. For anyone else, unfortunately, they were pretty cooked. So, nouns. Uniglot is a posteriori, and draws mostly from Germanic and Romance sources. Here, I put up 3 uniglot words with their translations in the 9 most spoken languages on Earth in descending order, bolding the words that seemed similar enough to be recognizable. Uniglot die is pretty similar to English day, Hindi dina, Spanish dia, Bengali dina, Portuguese dina, and Russian den, but not very similar to Mandarin tian, Arabic yam, or French jour. 6 out of 9, not a bad ratio. Next, uniglot cavalo is similar enough to Spanish caballo, French cheval, and Portuguese cavalo, but not similar at all to horse, ma, gora, hison, or loshad. And finally, Universalglot vocal is pretty similar to vowel, vocal, voye, and vogel, but not similar to yuan yin, svara, harf mutaharik, sibra barna, or glasna ya bukva. There seemed to be kind of a trend here. Indo-European languages seemed to be the ones that matched, especially the Romance languages. Kind of like this was another example of a touted world language based entirely on European vocabulary. Still, is it better to have very recognizable vocabulary to some people or barely recognizable vocabulary to everybody? In terms of derivation, there are certain affixes used to denote types of nouns. On negates, achki means superior, dis means decay, stan means place, and so on. Like kaval is horse, and kavelstan is stable, or place of horse. Decently helpful for determining the meaning of words and making neologisms, but Pirro said himself that he applied this pretty consistently to his 7,000-word lexicon. So, the number system. Did Pirro take this opportunity to be creative and choose a base other than decimal? No, but one could argue that being in the native languages of almost every human on Earth at the time, this was the more recognizable option, so Pirro chose recognizability over practicality. 1 is un, 2 is du, 3 is tri, 4 is quat, 5 is quint, 6 is sex, 7 is sept, 8 is oct, 9 is nov, and 10 is dec. Then 11 is undec, 12 is dudec, etc. So just the Latin numbers pretty much. So for reference, the numbers in Latin are unus, duo, tres, quatuor, quinque, sex, septem, octo, novem, and decem. One could see the derivation. For the example text, a fictional thank you letter by Pirro. Men, signor, I jate vos pro el servnes que vos habe donated ad me. Cred men, senor, que unun simili fal vos pote conten up me. Accept el atsecuantnes de men codi amic. So, how did Universalglot do as an IAL? Well, it was obviously very Eurocentric. but that was normal for the time in the Conlang community. It could have also been much simpler, with many elements remaining unoptimized, like the pronouns and orthography. However, it was really recognizable to an educated Western European audience. And the phonology was simple, with the only really confused choices being the inclusion of the rounded closed front vowel and the voiced uvular fricative. But remember, this came out in 1868. Universalglot was only the third known attempt at an IAL after Solresol and Communicationssprach from episode 1. In the end, Universalglot walked so Volapük and Esperanto could. With all this, Universalglot was better than Communicationssprach, making it the best interlang I reviewed so far. And stay tuned for next week, when the episode will be on Ishkrin. Leave any requests in the comments below.